finished my second year there, and I was going on to LaSalle. And my girlfriend got pregnant, who's my wife still, of the last 38 years. So it was sink or swim, right? It was better make something happen. I was fortunate enough to have parents who really supported us. So here we were at 18 years old, a little baby on the way, and it was time to figure out what I wanted to do. I worked every summer in a meat packing plant, which was a plant that my dad was the president of, and it was a smoked meat packing plant. Now, to give you a little bit of history on work ethic, my dad had a 6th grade education. Became the president of the 5 of the largest meat packing companies in the world. Bluebird Foods, Agar Packing, DAC International, Tupelos, Mid-South Packing, and Patrick Cudahy. All smoked meat. So if you eat bacon or eat a smoked ham, you've eaten one of those products. But here's a guy who had a 6th grade education, who worked extremely hard and had a passion for what he did, and became the president of all 5 of them at one time for about a 12-year period. So I learned very, very early on that hard work really does pay off. So, you know, putting in 70 or 80 hours a week was normal for us. So here I was at 18, a girlfriend who became my wife, with a baby on the way, and it was time to make something happen. So the little town that I grew up in, which was Oak Valley, just south of Woodbury, I'm not sure if anybody knows where that is, a little tiny town, happened to have a donut shop on Ogden Road. And I'd walk up to that donut shop, usually on Sundays, and I'd pick up donuts for my parents and my girlfriend. And one Sunday morning, I was walking up there, and the donut shop was closed. And there was a woman out there, and she was whitewashing the windows. And I said to her, "Geez, what happened to the donut shop?" She said, "Well, they went out of business." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to put here?" She said, "Well, I'm not really sure. It's up for rent." And I said, "How much is rent?" She said, $130 a month. I said, "I'll take it." She says, "You'll take it? What do you mean you'll take it?" I said, "Well, for $130 a month, I think I can figure out something to work." And the real thought process in my head was, right next to the donut shop was an Italian delicatessen that did an incredible amount of business. People there all the time. So I thought I had one aspect going for me. I already had people understanding where I would be, and what it was that, but what was it that I had to really develop? So I kind of got in there with my wife and a bunch of friends and spent about 3 weeks scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing, because you can only imagine this was a donut shop that had been making donuts. And you can imagine when you make donuts, everything turns to grease, right? The walls, ceiling, floors, everything. So we spent literally 3 weeks just scrubbing. Finally, after a couple of weeks, it came to me that the area really needed a butcher shop. Now, I didn't know anything about the meat business. Okay? Nothing. Because remember, I worked in summers in the smoked meat business, but I knew nothing about fresh meat. I didn't know anything about beef, pork, veal, poultry, lamb products, nothing at all. Yes, sir.
How exactly did you educate yourself? Because there's a lot of legal FDA, you know.
Well, the requirements when it comes to retail are not quite as critical as when it comes to wholesale. And I'll get to that, because that was a whole other part of my career that I was enlightened. So I decided to make this facility into a butcher shop. It was 15 feet wide and it was 60 feet deep. That was my retail store. It was $130 a month. That included CAM charges, right? Common area maintenance charges. So I hired a young guy from Philadelphia and his wife. He was the butcher and she was a meat wrapper. And they were about 25 years old, so they were a lot older than I was at the time. And they came in and they kind of really started to teach me the business. Very small store. How I got started was kind of simple. My dad came to me and said, "Look," gave us $10,000 as a wedding gift. And he said, "You can come to work for me at the meat packing plant and work in production and work your way up." He said, "Or you can take that $10,000 and you can do something yourself." You know, "Dad, what would you do?" Well, and his response to me was, "Well, I've been working for somebody else my entire life, and I've made these people an awful lot of money. So if I was in your position, I'd try it myself." So that's the real start of being an entrepreneur. I decided at that point, you know what, I'm going to take a shot at it. I had $10,000. So what was $10,000 worth at that point? Could I put a whole store together? And this is kind of, these are the kind of things that happen to you along the way when you do the right things. So my dad says to me, go down to 9th and Girard Avenue. Said there's a friend of mine down there by the name of Vincent Giordano. And Vince has a meat store down there. He's got a bunch of equipment down there, a bunch of extra equipment. Maybe he'll sell it to you. So I got in my car, I drove down in 9th and Girard. I met with Mr. Giordano. Mr. Giordano was 6'6", a big, big Italian guy with a cigar this big, and sat back in his chair and just rocked. And he was probably about 55 to 60 years old at that point in time. So I walked in, and of course I'm 18 years old, so you know how timid I am at that point in time, right? Not a whole lot of confidence of what I was going to do, but I knew I had to try to get this thing to work. So I sit down, and he says to me, come on in, you must be Ray's kid, and my dad's name is Ray as well. You must be Ray's kid. So I sit down, and I said, tell me what I'm going to do. And he says, well, go out back and take a look. He said, go out in the yard, see what equipment you like, tag it up. He said, we'll figure it out. So I got in the yard, and I spent literally 5 or 6 hours out there identifying what meat cases I needed, some freezers I needed, a walking box, some saws, tables. I brought the guy I hired with me because he knew more than I did about what we needed. Had a whole list, and I tagged everything. And I walked back in, and I said, Mr. Giordano, I tug everything. Let me know once you figure it all out what it's going to cost, and I'll see how I can pay for it. He goes, no problem. Go back home. Next morning I wake up, 9 o'clock in the morning, I go back up to the store, and we're continuing to clean. And 6 trucks show up. 6 flatbed trucks with every piece of equipment on that I asked for. Now I panicked at that point. I'm thinking, how much is this? What's this? I have no idea. So I said to the guys who got the truck there, and they're starting to take the front windows out because they're going to start moving equipment into the front windows because that's the only way you get this equipment in. I said, hold off, guys. I need to contact Mr. Giordano. I have to work out how much it is. I have to negotiate. You know, so I get Mr. Giordano on the phone. I said, Mr. Giordano, I really appreciate you sending this. I said, but I haven't even discussed the price. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I don't know anything about this. He says, well, he said, let me tell you a little story. He said, about 25 years ago, he said, I pulled up to a meat packing plant. He said, and I met your father. He said, all I had at that time was a station wagon. He said, and I was living out of that station wagon. He said, I went and asked your dad for a job. And your dad said, rather than coming to work in the plant, open your station wagon. I'm going to fill the back of it with hams. You go sell them. If you sell them, you bring back part of the money, you keep part of the money. He said, that's how I got started. Well, today, Giordano & Company is one of the largest roast beef, corned beef processors on the East Coast. So he took, and he said to me, no charge for any of the equipment. He said, just, that's what your dad did for me. He said, that's what I'm doing for you. So remember that, because it's really critical as you go through your career. And what you do for people will absolutely come back to you tenfold. So